So what Sanders was trying to say from the get-go, that he was hoping that his campaign would not just get him elected, which, he still thinks, and a lot of us still do, is possible, but to establish a grassroots movement in this country, the likes of which has not been seen since the late 60s. There's been there's nothing in this country for the left. There really isn't. And I don't give a shit if 300 people marched down Central Park West a year ago about global warming, or 300,000 people showed up for anti-war demonstrations before Bush and Cheney invaded Iraq. That's not a grassroots movement. That is a momentary shriek of don't do this. Now, you can argue with me as much as you want. I understand there are efforts being made to work towards social justice, but I'm talking about what Sanders is talking about, a grassroots political movement. That's what Occupy never was. It was a consciousness awareness raising, or a conscious awareness raising, whatever I'm trying to say, movement. But while the teabaggers kept it going and got people elected and destroyed the country, Occupy said, well, we're not politicians. We're not going to get into politics. So then what the fuck are you doing camping in Zuccotti Park? What is the point? I get more pissed off at people whose side I'm on than these goddamn fascists. I mean, I really do. I really do. Because there has been no left leadership in this country, and I'm not talking about some equivalent of Tea Party leaders. I'm talking about leadership that is consensual, leadership that comes from the organization that we're talking about, whatever that organization is, that establishes itself and settles down to work its ass off. Now, you may want to send me an email and say, you're full of shit, Malloy. Occupy is working behind the scenes. No, they're not. No, they're not. Now, if I'm being too hard on the left, I really apologize. Sanders was hoping that his candidacy would create a grassroots political reform progressive movement in this country. And maybe it will. Maybe it will. That was his, he said that's his secondary goal. And if that's the case, the test of the political revolution that Sanders has been talking about won't just be the strength of these primary contests where he gets delegate votes and this and that, but also whether his movement can survive without him and help get other candidates elected. That's the way Susie Kim presents it at the New York Times. No shit. We've been talking about this, the anti-nuke movement, which was very strong in the late 70s. What happened to that? Right down the crapper. The anti-war movement. What happened to that? Same place. There is no left activism in this country that makes a difference. There isn't. And the right has it locked down. And by the right, I'm not just talking about these psychotic, crazy, fucked up Republicans. I'm also talking about the Clinton machine. The Times cites, here's a woman, Melissa Stevens, 33. She's a Sanders supporter, single mother of two, first-time candidate for the Maine State House. She's going to run for the legislature in Maine. She says, a lot of these big ideas and these big revolutions happen at local and state levels first. That's right. That's right. Now, maybe whatever happens with Bernie Sanders, whether he goes all the way or not, and I hope he does, maybe the structure that is left behind And I've thought about this before many times, different presidential campaigns, and it always just fucking evaporates. As soon as the guy gets elected or the woman gets turned down or whatever it is, the movement that it appeared he or she was starting in order to raise political consciousness, in order to get that candidate elected, it just disappears. It's gone. Maybe it won't get gone this time, whether Sanders winds up in the White House or not. Now, this Melissa Stevens, it says here, as part of a broader network of progressive activists who say that the movement that has coalesced around Sanders can bring change to state and local governments around the country, regardless of what happens with his presidential bid. And that's the truth. And a lot of people over the years, and I've had my toe in the water in political activism and all kinds of bullshit since 1964. And I can tell you that the effort to change things, it can only happen one of two ways. Here are the two ways. Fucking bloody, violent revolution where a lot of people get killed and you have no way to determine what the outcome is going to be beforehand because war is that way. Or the other way is through political activism that provides results. You get people on the school boards, the county commissions, whatever the hell they are, the local governing boards in cities and states and towns, and then into the legislature, then into the government, and then you get people elected to Congress, and then yada, yada, yada. But it's been my experience that leftists don't like to do that. They want the revolution. Fuck that. Let's just take up guns and go shoot people. And when we find out that we've been conned, as we found out during the 2010 elections, congressional elections, after we had 2 years to realize that Obama was a fake, what do? We say to hell with it. We don't show up for the off-year elections. And what happens then? Well, what happened? Since the Democrats didn't show up to vote, or the liberals, or the progressives after we had 2 years of Obama, the Republicans recaptured both houses of Congress by 2014. They won control of 31 governorships and nearly 70% of state legislative chambers. That's right, 70%. I watched this state, and there was nothing I could do. Georgia, go from being a Democratic, they voted for what? We carried Obama the first year, I think, the first election. Flip over to there's not a state officer in Georgia now who's anything but a hardcore, right-wing, religious fanatic Republican. And it's happened all over the country. Now, what do? We put our energy into causes. That's what the left does. We don't look at the big picture. We look at things like the fight for 15 to raise the minimum wage. We look at Occupy Wall Street. We look at Black Lives Matter. Here's the line. During the heyday of Occupy, many activists rejected electoral politics, unlike their Tea Party counterparts who leapt into races at every level of government and scored huge victories for conservatives. Joe Trippi, who worked with Howard Dean, said, quote, "We've been doing this backwards. The mistake is thinking that we get behind a progressive candidate for president and that will solve all of our problems." That's such bullshit. So the reason this came up is because of this article in the Times about maybe even if Sanders doesn't get elected to the presidency, or even if he does, either way, maybe those of us who consider ourselves to be progressive left or whatever you want to call it, you know what I'm saying? Maybe we will start that long process. I won't be around to see the final result of it, but there's a lot of people out there. Sanders really appeals to people in their 30s and 40s and 50s. If those people, and 20s, if those people will take a look at the results of this election and say, you know, we're fucked every time we turn around with a progressive, that's it. You know, he or she goes so far and then thud. And then we wait till the next election cycle and we get another one. Thud. Thud. Maybe the Sanders movement in this country will refuse to stop, whether he is elected president or not.